Hello and welcome to coverage of Pro Tour Journey into Knicks. Marshall Sutcliffe in the booth with Zach Hill. It is round 3 of the first draft pod here at the Pro Tour. This is where, a lot of people get off to a really good start. You 3-0 your first draft pod, you got to be feeling great. If you got a good deck, especially for the constructed portion, you can really get things moving. Let's take a look at our competitors. Eric Froehlich, you see him there. We just saw Anssi Alkio a minute ago. He's from Finland. Top 8 of the last Pro Tour, Born of the Gods. He's got 24 pro points coming into this event here. Eric Froehlich was platinum before, looking to make a run in it again this year as well. He's currently ranked number 22 on our top 25 pro rankings. And it looks like they're about ready to go here. And we are underway. Anssi is going to be on the play here. He's going to lead things off with a mountain. He likes playing aggressive decks. In the previous format, I watched him draft a bit. I don't know if his opinions changed since Journey into Knicks came out. We've certainly seen the format change a little bit.
Yeah, again, we keep saying things like, oh, the format's slowing down. But we have seen some fast, big games going on, and this one looks, I don't know. I mean, we see a potentially very aggressive draw from Froehlich with early Squelching Leeches at a huge side, Knicks-born Triton coming out, but also he could be on the Guardians of Miletus, Siren of the Silent Song line. And Anssi Alkio, some pretty powerful early drops.
He's got a sightless Brawler into a Kragma Butcher here. Now, the Brawler, well, it's sightless. It cannot attack alone. It needs to go in there with a friend. But the shields, they are up for Eric Froehlich. Miletus Guardians here. 06 Defender is going to do some blocking potentially, but not a great play against the current board here because he's still going to be taking 2 damage, and that's going to enable some inspired shenanigans to start coming.
Wow.
And there's a Blade Tusk board, though, interestingly, can be blocked this time.
Can be blocked by artifact creatures. That is true. Froehlich, short on blue mana, Sealock monster in his hand, not going to be able to come out anytime soon.
Well, he did draw an island here.
Did draw an island, needs 2 for that, but that opens up Siren of the Silent Song, Knicks-born Triton. Silent Song, one of the most powerful cards in the format, but not exactly optimal here, although that is a big Squelching Leeches.
Well, that's interesting because Eric decided to play, instead of giving himself access to the double blue 5-drops, he's not going to be able to play those on turn 5 now, but in return for that, he gets a 4/4 Squelching Leeches as opposed to a 3/3 Squelching Leeches, which is a big difference here given the creatures that Alkio has. And Alkio enters the red zone. He's played a land here. He's got 5 mana, and in red-white, he has any number of removal and or combat tricks at his disposal here.
Yeah, I mean, everything from is +2/+2/+2/0 on first strike, 1/0 to 2 creatures, Divine Verdict, which I think he has in his hand. I mean, basically any combat trick in the format, even something simple like a God's Willing to just stick around for a turn. Ifro can't expect that his block is just going to eat one of Alkio's creatures. The question is, can he afford to just keep taking damage?
He is asking himself that exact question right now, and he decides, look, I know he's got something, but I can't just keep taking big hits here. So he's going to block the Blade Tusk Spore with the Guardians, and that is Divine Verdict that's going to take down the Squelching Leeches. But that's not too bad news for Eric Froehlich. It means he takes no damage from the Sightless Brawler this turn, and it's just a 1-for-1. He does, however, take 4.
And Ifro, still 14, plenty of life to work with right here, but losing the 4/4 Leeches is a big blow as he doesn't really have anything to halt the offense from Alkio's side. He's able to play Siren of the Silent Song, but not keep open mana for that Necrobite, which is really what he wants to cast right now to stabilize.
Necrobite doesn't do a lot with Guardians, unfortunately. Yeah, this is a tough spot here for Ifro. He is going to be taking a big hit. He decided to take 1 extra damage last turn to play around a couple of spells.
And I think when you play a Siren as opposed to Knicks-born Triton there, your plan is actually not to block this turn. But I think he has to say, okay, look, I'm going to take a hit. I'm going to take a lot of damage. I still get to block, but now I get to start attacking and trying to stabilize next turn.
Well, I was going to say, isn't he just block the Sightless Brawler here?
I guess so. I would have expected Triton to be the play if that was your plan, but I guess he's saying, look, Triton can bestow.
Yes.
Triton has more toughness, can stick around longer. Okay, so that makes sense.
Here's a Lagana Band Trailblazer now for Anssi Alkio, and he's got chosen by Heliod to at least give it some power. It's only going to have 1 power, and I think that we need infinite for the toughness here. It's got 7 toughness now.
A lot of toughness.
A lot of toughness. He's going to draw a card, and look, he's going to add another card to the board here. All right, Nyxborn Rollicker is going to tick that thing up to 8 toughness, but more importantly, it's going to make it 4 power.
So Lagana Band Trailblazer, one of the biggest upgrades to Yoked Ox you can imagine in this format. The heroic ability is, you know, I think when it first came out, players thought it was okay, but thought it was a mild upside. It's really come to define the format.
All right, so again, with the shields up attempt here for Eric Froehlich, he is looking to get his defense going, and he does so in a pretty big way with Sealock Monster. It's a 5/5, and that is going to be a very serviceable blocker here, as it looks like Ifro may have stabilized. Now, if we see Anssi Alkio attack with all of his creatures, we'll know he has some type of trick or removal spell further. But otherwise, I think Ifro's in a pretty good spot here, sitting at 11 life. He can take the 3 damage from the Trailblazer if Ansio were to attack with everything and not have anything. He can block the boar with his Guardians, and he can eat the Butcher with his 5/5, but instead he doesn't. Anssi Alkio only attacks with Blade Tusk Boar. That gets blocked, and there's a big addition to the board here, though, for Anssi Alkio. Stone Shock Giant. That's the kind of card that can blow these middle to late game stalls right out of the water, Zach.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you know, it's one of those situations where now Alkio, every land is live and every spell is live. Because once that giant activates, Sealock Monster not really part of the equation, Guardians not really part of the equation. You know, really threatens to make the game lethal, and it's a 5/4, so it can attack into Sealock Monster, and with any help at all, it can attack into Guardians of Meletis. See Froehlich with Necrobite mana up, so now he's able to block and regenerate if he needs to do so. See, I think just
is that Ashiok's Adept that he played?
That is an Ashiok's Adept, okay. Yes. An excellent target for Necrobite.
Yes. Very good. Anssi Alkio surveying the scene. Cast something targeting Lagana Band Trailblazer because I heard him say heroic.
Ashiok's Adept, when you cast a spell, your opponent discards a card. Froehlich has 2 creatures that can target.
It's an ordeal of Heliod.
Oh, man.
And right now, that is going to trigger immediately.
A casual 30 life points.
Yeah, getting 10 life for Anssi Alkio. And he is attacking with every creature he has. Now, you got to think that Ifro would love to get that Lagana Band Trailblazer off the battlefield. It is going to be a bit of a pain going forward, but isn't the Stone Shock Giant the most important creature here?
I think so. I mean, you're able to just eat the Minotaur straight up, which I think is pretty huge right now. I mean, depending on how much respect you're giving to tricks. If that's what you want to do, you still get to block Blade Tusk Boar. You could block the 2/3. Did Inspired trigger this turn?
No.
Okay.
So this is Necrobite. This is going to take down the Lagana Band Trailblazer potentially, and it also gets a land out of Anssi Alkio's hand. But Ifro did decide just to trade off. He bit the bullet. He said, I'm going to trade my 5/5 for your 5/4 and get that thing off the table as Ifro slowly works his way towards being stable here. All right, so Eric Froehlich, turn pass back to him. It's got to be tempting to try to keep that Sealock on the table. He had the mana to monstrous it, but he just didn't feel like he had the time for it.
Yeah, and now really managing to stabilize, as you were saying. You know, Alkio 1/1, not doing a lot. Kragma Butcher, great card, but the 06 Guardians of Meletis just doing a lot of work in this
It
match.
really is.
We see some reports from the field. We got Guillaume Wafo-Tapa up 1 over Jeremy Dezani, and we've got Jamie Park up 1 over Shuhei Nakamura.
Okay. And here is Nyxborn Triton on Ashiok's Adept. So it's a 3/6 blocker now. It does trigger, but Anssi Alkio has no cards in hand, so he won't have to discard, of course.
I can think right now of very few better cards than Wild Celebrants. If Alkio could draw that right now.
Yeah. Now, no, we don't know if he has it in his list, but in his main deck. But it is a card that you can find in the sideboards of a lot of red players pretty often. And Anssi Alkio is going to continue to attack with Blade Tusk board just to keep Ifro honest. And he's going to follow up with Oreskos Swiftclaw. And Ifro draws his card for the turn and just casually passes it back, says it's your turn. He has stabilized the board at 9 life here, but it's starting to get a little bit worse every single time as he only has 2 blockers now.
Alkio does have a Wild Celebrants in his deck, but it is in the sideboard. So he drafted it, but is not playing it right now.
That's usually where it starts out.
Yeah, exactly. But that 06, just, I mean, Alkio would have easily won this game had Guardians of Meletis not been an artifact.
Truth. Ifro draws his card again and just has to say go. Currently, he is still stable. And right now, Alkio just keeps pecking away with the Blade Tusk board. It just keeps getting blocked. And all of the finally pays off as he finds Titan Strength. Or does it pay off?
That is a huge nightmarish end for Froehlich. Froehlich with exactly 2 cards in hand to give the boar -2/-0 and a big 2-for-1 for Froehlich that turn.
By the way, they're both lands as well, so he very consciously kept those 2 lands in his hand. A lot of people will keep 1, but Ifro knew that he had Nightmarish End somewhere, and he made sure to keep it so that it was just big enough, and he gets a huge 2-for-1 there.
Yeah, that was very big. And now Ifro, a lot more lands on the battlefield than Alkio. That means that what's likely as this game goes further is for Froehlich to be drawing spells and Alkio to start drawing some more lands.
Yeah, Ifro's in a bit of a tough spot here. He's drawn quite a few lands over the last few turns, and he really just needs anything. But the good news is that he's stable. I believe he just drew another Squelching Leeches, which would be a 6/6 on this board, if that is what that was. Yeah, he plays the Swamp first, so I think that is. Let's find out. Yeah, Squelching Leeches number 2.
Man.
And it's actually a 7/7 because he played that Swamp out of his hand, too.
That is one powerful uncommon Magic card.
Yeah, when the game goes really long, if you're a heavy black deck like Ifro is, that is a house. 4 mana for a 7/7, and it's just the biggest thing on the battlefield, not close.
Yeah, 3 1s and 1/1s with no abilities don't really match up too well.
No, and this is where you start to see, you know, the downside. Aggressive decks are really good early in the game, but, you know, Anssi Alkio just drew and played Sigiled Skink for the turn. It's not a powerhouse play at this late stage, and it's not going to do that much. It's not awful, but, you know, Ifro's playing 7/7s. You're playing 2/1s.
Yeah.
Like, it's not the same league here.
You see Alkio holding on to his lands, basically representing that he doesn't have anything else like Stone Shock Giant left in his deck. Because if so, you'd really want to have that 8th land on the battlefield. Looks like a big draw for Froehlich there, though, with Herald of Torment. That means those leeches, even though Alkio's at 30 life, could be lethal really fast.
3 turns?
It's crazy.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, but you see the look on Eric Froehlich's face there, because it is risky. Not only does it mean that he would be attacking with one of his best blockers, also he's going to lose 1 life during his upkeep every turn, and he just can't risk it. He just says go. It's just too risky for him to start trying to apply pressure in that way.
Yeah, I mean, you know, at 9 life, I mean, you have to assume you have something. That is a downside to bestowing Herald right here. If you have it, is that you start taking damage. I mean, Ifro playing very conservatively right now. That said, you know, there are things that Alkio could do about the leeches. If he has a Portent of Betrayal, it basically kills it immediately. So yeah, just conservative play from Froehlich. But again, you have so many lands, your opponent has almost none. You have to expect, okay, you're going to draw out of it before your opponent does.
I mean, additionally, though, Eric Froehlich, if he does want to start applying pressure, doesn't need to take the risk of Herald of Torment.
Right.
He can just start attacking with the leeches. It's not like Alkio has great blocks for it anyway. He just needs to make sure that he feels fully safe on board, that he's not going to get cracked back by some threaten effect like you mentioned, Herald of Torment, or even the new rare Harnessed by Force.
Right. Yeah, Harnessed by Force could be, I mean, could just turn this entire game around. And interestingly, just straight up Herald of Torment, Froehlich actually loses the race, I think, at 30-9 life.
All right, so there's a Blade Tusk board now for Anssi Alkio. He has gone wide. He has 5 different creatures on the battlefield. But, oh, here we go. Eric Froehlich, this is an important one. He's got Disciple of Phoenix for your hand, and he now knows that Anssi Alkio has nothing left. He does get to take one of those lands. He's going to take a planes from him. But now Ifro has perfect information at the moment. So let's see what he does with it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Herald of Torment on the leeches. Yeah. He's got enough, and he's going to attack. 3-turn clock. He says, Anssi Alkio, you got to draw something, or I'm going to take this game down. Boom, 10 damage. It might even be 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. No, it's still just 10. And Ifro sitting at 9 life. He knows that he's safe currently, but every draw step could bring him closer to death. He is going to try to limit Anssi Alkio to as few draw steps as possible.
I mean, talking about momentum shifts here, I mean, normally when your opponent fires off an Ordeal of Heliod, and you're sitting at 9 life, that is quite the uphill battle. But these Squelching Leeches have just been this entire match. And, of course, Herald of Torment, on top of everything else, taking a leech to the skies can end the game quickly.
Yeah, flying leeches is just very scary.
Oh, also just gross. Yeah.
Flying demon leeches.
Oh, man. I think I had a nightmare about that one. So, I mean, Alkio has a lot of permanents on the board, but just not really able to break through and needing to deal 9 damage without your Intimidate boards. I mean, this is one of the better Guardians of Meletus we've seen at the Pro Tour level.
All right, so it looks like Alkio is going to attack with his Blade Tusk Boar and his Sigiled Skink. Basically, just allowing the Skink to die here so that he can get that scry effect. He is definitely in desperation mode. And Ifro's trying to decide what he wants to block with. I mean, he can put the 3/6 in front of it if he wants. He looks like he's lined up a couple of 1/3s to put in front of it. You definitely don't want to lose 2 of your chump blockers if it comes to that.
Right.
He's going to put 6 toughness and 2 power on it. And Alkio says go to damage, and Ifro's going to be fine with that because it means none of them die.
I mean, at this stage of the game, basically if Alkio scries away a land, it's basically like being up a card. So that attack essentially free. Maybe your opponent decides to take some damage playing overly conservatively. Probably not. It's Ifro. He's probably not going to walk into that. But, you get some information. You get some value.
So Eric Froehlich drops down to 8 from the Herald of Torment trigger, draws his card for the turn. Alkio has a Magma Spray and a Mountain in his hand currently.
Oh, and Ifro, big aerial formation here, could theoretically just close out the game by with a huge strive, but just opting, I think, to present lethal with the leeches next turn.
Yeah, it wasn't actually enough. Yeah, it would be 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. He could do 18, 19.
19,
yeah,
not quite
not
20.
Yeah, so
wow.
Very, very close. So he is going to have to let Anssi Alkio draw that one card and just hope that it's not something along the lines of a Harness by Force. Though, you got to think that if Alkio had that, he probably would have been playing those lands out of his hand. You want to get when you have Strive cards, you really do need your lands. Anssi Alkio says, "Can I go to combat?" Ifro says, "Sure," and Ansio says, "No, I don't want to."
I'm still just can't get over the Guardians. Alkio just top decked Eidolon of Countless Battles, which would have been lethal if Froehlich didn't have a blocker.
Wow.
He could have just put it on the Blade Tusk board, and despite all of this crazy momentum, despite Ifro's board, that would have just been game over. But Guardians of Meletus they both guard Meletus and Ifro's life total, and are really just winning this game.
And speaking of winning this game, that's exactly what Eric Froehlich did. He was under a lot of heat early, but he managed to stabilize the board, drew a few lands in the middle part of the game, but hung tough and eventually found a win condition. And interestingly, slammed the door. I mean, 3 attacks. Boom, boom, boom. Yeah. Game over.
And normally you don't expect to be able to win at 3 attacks when your opponent is at 30 life.
All right, so after these messages, we're going to have the next game for Ifro versus Anssi Alkio.
Play Magic at a store near you every Friday. Earn Planeswalker points and battle against your friends in Friday Night Magic. May's FNM promo is Tormented Hero. Visit wizards.com/FNM for more information. Ignite your competitive spark by playing in a Grand Prix. These open tournaments feature the best players in your region as well as top Magic pros from around the world. Upcoming Grand Prix events include Atlanta, Manchester, Sao Paulo, Moscow, Chicago, Washington, D.C., and Milan. Visit wizards.com/Grand Prix for a complete schedule.
All right, welcome back to the feature match area here at Pro Tour Journey. Now let's take a look at one of our side tables real quick while our main table are shuffling. We can pop over to table D here. All right. Now, I think that is Jeremy Dizani again, not Dajon.
So a Dizani and Wafo, really complicated board right here.
Yeah, this is a lot to pop in for. We apologize for extreme number of permanents on the battlefield here. So it looks like the sleeve is a 3-1 from Seder Nick Smith. I don't know what the other two are on the other side. I'm assuming maybe they're birds?
Yeah, there's a pair of them. It's a blue deck. They're wolves due to the raised by wolves.
Oh, they're the raised by wolves, of course. Okay. Good eye, Zach. And now we have at least some semblance of a board state figured out. This is Jeremy Dizani's list that we looked at earlier. We watched him draft this. It's Naya colors. He's splashing white. It's green. It's green-red base. I know, Zach.
And I believe he's sitting at 2-0.
I think he is.
Oh,
yeah.
is he? Oh, that's weird.
And it looks like he's lining up a block here against Guillaume Afatapo. We get some proper tokens.
That is a lot of blockers. That is a lot of damage.
Interestingly, Dizani also has, 5 cards in his hand as well? They're all spells?
Yeah.
There's a lot of action here for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you see an Eidolon of Blossoms on the battlefield. That is probably why Dizani's hand is as full of action as it is.
Yeah, good call.
The question is just, does he want to chump block? Does he want to try to kill the thing? I mean, Dizani has a lot he can do right now. I think when you have that many cards in hand, you just want to stay alive, untap, be able to get some of those permanents onto the battlefield. From other tables right now, we have Olivier Duport and Andrea Mengucci tied at 1 apiece for the title of King of the Hill.
Andrea Mengucci doesn't want to give it up. You know, he drafted a sweet blue-green deck, and he's just decided to stay there. All right, let's see what the follow-up play is here for Jeremy Dizani. He is going to bestow Nylium as emissary on Eidolon of Blossoms, drawing a card. All right, why don't we head back over to Eric Froehlich versus Anssi Alkio. We're going to get game 2 action underway. Ifro won the first game. He's playing a blue-black control deck with a couple of squelching leeches. And Anssi Alkio is playing really a heavy red aggressive deck with some white in there as well. So this is kind of a classic limited matchup here, control versus aggro. You got to love it. I like formats that allow you to draft both. And I think we're really into one here now with Journey to Nyx in the mix.
Yeah, I think both aggro decks and control decks viable. Anssi Alkio's hand just not very good right now. We've got Archetype, Titan, Strength, and nothing. Froehlich's hand, meanwhile, we see why this is at the 2-0 table. Siren of the Silent Song, Eye Gouge probably in out of the sideboard. Hour of Need makes lots of 4/4s.
Shipbreaker Kraken, too, to finish thing up. That is a house. Yeah, the Eye Gouge is really nice. Also, what a savage start here for Ifro. Shipwreck Singer into Siren of the Silent Song. Just 2 gold uncommons that are both fantastic. I have had the pleasure of this exact start, and it feels great.
Shipwreck Singer, called by many people the uncommon planeswalker for all of its disparate abilities.
All right, so Archetype of Aggression is going to pick up a Rollicker here and get in there for 4 damage, but unfortunately for Alkio, that's really all he has going on at this early stage in the game, where Eric Froehlich has a whole heck of a lot more than that going on.
Ifro could set up Siren into Necrobite, which if it regenerates, taps, and able to get him some more discard. The downside is just not attacking and passing up with a defensive spell against an aggressive red deck. Not really where you want to be.
Also, the Archetype of Aggression does have Trample, so he would still take some amount of damage. So he's going to opt instead to play Ashiok's Adept and leave Eye Gouge open in his hand here. No block, so he's going to take some hits early. Not bad for Anssi Alkio here. He has gotten in for 8 damage so far with that thing. Wow. And he's going to follow up with Sigiled Skink and just play a land and say go. So even though a fairly rough start, Anssi is at least applying pressure. And here's Eye Gouge is going to be met with Titan Strength from Anssi Alkio to save his Sigiled Skink and get a scry. He's going to keep the card on top.
Still a pretty big eye gouge there for Ifro. Being able to have a live spell that turn, bait the Titan Strength, not have the Titan Strength used on offense when his opponent is...
Did you see what just happened,
No.
Zach?
What?
So the Siren of the Silent Song untaps, makes Anssi Alkio discard what is now his last card. Also, he had put Blade Tuskboar back on top with the scry. It mills you for 1.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
Just that little wrinkle, that little, what is that even there for? Well, now we know. It just messes up your opponent's scry. And all of a sudden, Eric Froehlich has Anssi Alkio on 0 cards in hand, and is going to start applying pressure in the air. He has one of my favorite cards from Journey into Nyx, by the way. I'm really going to be keeping an eye on this one. He has Hour of Need in his hand. That's a card that can shut the door on a game very quickly as well. He, if he wanted, could take out his Shipwreck Singer and his... he could take out whatever, any 2 of his creatures, make 8 power of flying, and just hit for 8/8 and kill him. Also, he could block here if he really wanted, but...
Well, that does not do a lot if he wants to target it with Hour of Need because of the trample.
I mean with the 4/4.
Oh, right.
But you are correct, Zach, and we should explain that if Ifro goes to block and then use Hour of Need, the creature's going to get removed, which normally says, well, the creature's already blocked, so it's not dealing damage. But Trample actually overrides that and will just carry over all of the damage to the defending player.
So he's just saying, okay, look, I'm going to block with Ashiok.
I think he's actually still thinking about it. I think maybe he's going through a similar thought process to what we were just saying. Well, if I do that, I'm still going to take 4. Is there any point?
Well, I really like the idea of Hour of Needing your Ashiok's Adept, getting at your opponent's last card, then potentially blocking with a 4/4 and activating Shipwreck Singer, taking out the archetype of aggression while keeping your Sphinx alive.
I like that, too. That's interesting.
We also can see Necrobite here, keeping the Adept alive, only taking like 1 damage and still getting that last card out there, and not taking any with the activation of the Shipwreck Singer.
Yeah, so tight play there for Eric Froehlich, meaning remembering to activate that Singer so that he takes 0 damage. I mean, it was only the difference between 1 damage and 0, but that can matter big time as the game goes later.
I mean, there's so much card advantage for Ifro's side of the board. Off the Ashiok's Adept, off the Siren, Shipwreck Singer really putting a halt to Alkio's offense, blanking the Sigiled Skink, blanking the Rollicker effectively. Firm command of the game from Ifro, and that's not even considering that he has Shipbreaker Kraken and Hour of Need in his hand.
What is Ifro 90% to win from here? 95?
I would say it is a large number.
It's a large number, yeah. I mean, Eric Froehlich firmly in command here against Anssi Alkio. The control deck really putting the screws down on the control deck now, on the aggressive deck now.
I love the idea of an upkeep Hour of Need right here, a draw step Hour of Need to take out Alkio's card before he can even cast it.
That's cute. I like that.
It's precious.
Well, and he also has a card in his hand, so you can get a trigger. You can get both.
I'm getting word now that Jamie Park actually won his match against Shuhei. Match is done. Jamie Park advancing, I believe, to 3-0. Pretty powerful comeback from the former World Championships finalist.
Okay, so Ifro is going to force the Rollicker and the Sigiled Skink both to attack here. He's not going to have mana to activate his Shipwreck Singer, but he just has blockers, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, exactly. You basically say, okay, I'm going to block. You had 1 turn to draw a trick. Let's see what you had. Otherwise, I'm going to just abyss your board.
Abyss your board, meaning?
Basically just make you sacrifice creatures by attacking them into bigger creatures.
And that's exactly what happens here. Risco's Swiftclaw joins the fray, but it's not going to do anything either, as Shipwreck Singer can just activate, make it attack, shrink it down, which kills it. Unfortunately for Alkio, he just has no other choice here. It's like he can just play nothing. If he does that, he's just going to lose.
I mean, the last thing you want is to have a bunch of 1 toughness creatures against your opponent's live Shipwreck Singer.
All right, and here is Hour of Need on Shipwreck Singer, and of course trying to make Anssi Alkio discard his last card with the Ashiok's Adept. This puts 4/8/10 power on the battlefield, but there's a Follow the Hammer here, I think, for Anssi Alkio. Interesting.
It's a crazy amount of value out of that Ashiok's Adept. We have seen a lot of discard. I mean, the fall of the hammer is quite good there, but he still forced his opponent to use it right away. And Ifro with 6 power worth of attackers on the battlefield, that is pretty hard to beat.
Both in the air as well.
Right. And when your opponent is at 12 life, the numbers work out very nicely for you.
All right, so here's 4 damage coming in, and Shipbreaker Kraken to follow up. Ifro decides actually to leave back his Siren of the Silent Song, and that is going to do it. Eric Froehlich is our winner. He wins 2-0 over Anssi Alkio. Take a good gander at our feature match area here for a moment, and we'll be back after these messages. No, we're going to jump right into another match. Sorry about that. We are in Table D, I'm told, which probably means not a lot to you at home, but it does mean that Jeremy Dezani is still playing against Guillaume Afotapa and still adding stuff to the board. This game is still going. It's the same one.
It's Table D for Dezani, clearly.
If we're basing it off of permanent count, yes.
So basically, Dezani looks like he's just setting up a big, what's that, a Crowan Phalanx. Able to activate it with a board full of permanents several times. Trample creatures with Nylea's Emissary. Just a really flooded board. Wafo has the Vortex Elemental back on defense, able to threaten whatever Dezani's biggest creature is. But, I mean, just a board full of threats.
Yeah, and it sounds like Dezani's on 10 and Wafotapa's on 4.
Huh.
And I think we're going to see potentially this game come to a close fairly quickly. Though it does look like Dezani's being pretty patient in building out his board here.
Well, the one thing against a blue deck, cards like Griptide, cards like Sudden Storm, even cards like Voyage's End, it can really disrupt combat out of nowhere. The last thing you want to do is commit to a big attack, miss lethal by just a couple points of damage, and then suddenly be vulnerable to a counterattack from whatever your opponent has. I mean, again, green cards can, there's pump spells can end the game really quickly. So it's worthwhile to be conservative against a deck with both this much trickiness and the ability to win a game out of nowhere. We saw Mischief of Mayhem from John Finkel threatening to deal like 13 points of damage in a single attack. That's a card that you'd have to think about here.
Right, exactly. And we've got Guillaume Afotapa playing carefully here. He plays Sigil Starfish. He's able to leave up Stymied Hopes, though it doesn't look like that's going to matter here as Dezani has infinite mana. But there's also a Fleet Feather Cockatrice in hand.
Oh, wow.
For Wafotapa.
Oh
no. Here it is. The Great Revel is upon us. He has just resolved it, and looks like he's going to get 4 2/2 Satyr tokens here as well. I mean,
party time.
It is party time, and he is overwhelming the board here.
Mind-blowing.
7 mana, and you get 8 power of haste spread all out over 4 bodies here.
You're sitting there with Stymied Hopes in your hand, thinking it's probably likely to counter a 7-mana spell, but no. Sorry. No. We see Fleet Feather Cockatrice, a card that Wafo can play right now. Stymied Hopes, again, probably not going to do a whole lot. I mean, I could see just casting it for the Scry, but you really need the Chimera in play right now. But this is going to be a big attack from Dezani with Wafo at only 4 life.
That's right. And, I mean, Dezani has lethal here if he wants it. And here they come. Attack, attack, attack.
Bonnet, bonnet.
I love that.
Oh, yeah.
Not that many people will get that, but the ones that do will like it. All right, so that looks like it's going to do it. But I believe we're going to get a game 3 here as well, because Wafotapa won the first game.
Oh, Wafo got the first one. My fault.
Yeah, so this is forcing a game 3 here. Jeremy Dezani, we talked about his mana base a little bit while he was drafting and how we were saying, it's a tough, he's got a lot of double mana symbols. It's not going to be easy to cast all of his spells. But Wafotapa does not apply enough pressure quickly enough. It's going to give Dezani enough time to set up his mana and resolve. I mean, he's got really powerful spells.
Well, while we're on the subject of how great Dezani's deck is and how masterfully it was drafted by an incredibly talented player, we can talk about the power of his mana acceleration and really the decent amount of removal he has for a deck that is so clustered around the 4 slot. He does have enough acceleration to be able to get those permanents onto the battlefield.
All right. So we'll get a little sideboarding here.
I just want to see things get hit with successful stymied hopes. I just want to see hope die in this match.
You know what's funny? I don't. I like that that Wafatapa's been stuck with it in his hand every time we see it. Have you ever had somebody play that against you? It stinks.
Constantly. I get gotten with it all the time.
Yeah.
Pretty recently, I just had a 4th mana that I could have played. Just didn't. Forgot the card was in the format very skillfully.
That happens.
Yeah.
You're not the only one that's done that.
In fairness, I needed to know which land to play and represent 2 different tricks and blah, 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 blah. But just get gotten. You just get taught a lesson. I don't know what that lesson is, but I certainly got taught one.
Play your land first.
Play your lands, exactly. Yeah, I mean, I've been hyping up Desani's deck. Wafo's deck is also awesome. I mean, it is full of platinum hits. You got a lot of really powerful green, blue, gold cards. I mean, these are what 3-0 decks at the Pro Tour look like.
Do you think he first picked the Fleet Feather Cockatrice?
I would have to say it's unlikely. I mean, I think we've got tape somewhere, someone spotting, but that is just such a risky card to first pick. It's powerful, but committing to straight green-blue out the gates is, I mean, you are asking for a lot to go right in that draft. That said, there are a lot of powerful blue-green-gold cards. I mean, we saw Desani try to get in on the Kiora's follower action when he had no other blue cards in the draft. So, I mean, it's definitely tempting.
So I think that they recorded all the draft picks for the draft viewer for this one. So if that's the case, we'll get a chance to look at it. I'm pretty sure that they were sitting fairly close to each other during the draft portion as well. Maybe even right next to each other. So that could be interesting to check out later. I always like to go back and look at that. You can pretend like you're in the seat of any player there and see what cards they were getting. You can actually learn a lot about how drafts work, how the flow goes for a draft by looking at the draft.
Well, and that's actually one of the things that's really helpful to me as a player is actually check out one seat and then look at the seat to the right of that and figure out how the player you've been watching got past the cards that he did. Also, do you literally like to pretend you're in the seat? Marshall, do you look around for the cameras and the lights?
No, I don't do that. I get enough cameras and lights.
Nice, not so humble brag there. My beautiful face is plastered all over the internet.
That is not. So, you think Jeremy Desani is going to win this? I think you've made that abundantly clear from your really subtle hints here.
I mean, he is on the draw for Game 3, which is probably not where you want to be with a deck that's that late game intensive. Not to just keep talking about stymied hopes, because it's really not the most exciting part of Wafo's deck, but it is a card that's really well positioned against all of Desani's expensive spells.
I think that Stymied Hopes is going to hit Market Festival this game, and it's all going to come unraveling. Yep. So that's my prediction.
He's going to need the double red to cast Revel of the Fallen God, and is just not going to have it.
Yep. Or the double white to cast Eidolon of Countless Battles, or the double green to cast Nylea's Disciple, or Humbler of Mortals.
You've spent so long telling your listeners not to be greedy that you can't respect a good, healthy amount of greed.
A little dive into the deep end of the greed pool. You might be right, Zach.
Sometimes you just got to feel it.
You might have a good point here.
Is Desani mulliganing?
Yes.
Oh. I see an opening hand from Desani. It looks pretty good. I see Forest Mountain, Fauna Fertility, Traveler's Amulet, Ray of Disillusion, Starfall, Revel of the Fallen God.
Okay. So does he have the mana ramp and the fixing in that hand that he needs?
He does. He can go turn 1 Fount, turn 2 activate it, or Amulet for the planes, play a second turn Font. You probably lead with Font, but...
All right, so it looks like it was Wafotapa that took a mull here.
Rough.
And there's Font turn 1. And a turn 2 Vaporkin. All right, so a little bit of pressure here for Guillaume Wafotapa on turn 2 is going to allow him to begin the process of beating down and punishing Desani for playing a bunch of mana ramp and things like that don't affect the board directly.
Right.
But once Dizani gets over that hump of getting all the colors in play, he's going to be able to start playing really powerful things over and over again. And we'll have to see if the Vaporkin is good enough. Wafo Tapa has a particularly poor draw here. He's mulliganed to 6, and now he's got 3 lands Coastline Chimera with absolutely no play on turn 3 here.
Yeah, I mean, Vaporkin is exactly what you want, but not followed up by any pressure, and just a 1/5. Not very good in this matchup. And without any more pressure, we're just letting Dizani ramp into everything. Wafo, again, the God Hunter Octopus, again, just not coming out anytime soon.
There's that Revel of the Fallen God in hand for Dizani, but that is not the most important card right now. He's got other stuff to do.
And I'm liking just Traveler's Amulet, activate it, play your 4th land, play a Satyr Hedonist. Actually, I think threatening to Revel with an additional land if you drew it next turn, offer Ritual in the Hedonist. You probably don't want to play that right into a bunch of untapped mana from Wafo Tapa, but man.
No, but that would be pretty sweet if he went for it. Look, you said dive deep into the greed pool. I mean, if you're going to do it, might as well just not play around anything, right?
I would love to go swimming in the greed pool. I would invest in a greed pool.
Don't invite me. I don't want to go to your pool party.
Oh, Marshall, it's fun.
I'll be in the consistency kiddie pool on the other end.
The consistency hot tub.
Yeah.
Smaller, always enjoyable.
Yeah.
Oh,
All
I love
right.
it.
So Satyr Hedonist. I mean, what if Guillaume just says, well, let's say he draws a land here and just decides that he's got to run out his Coastline Chimera. Does Jeremy just go for it?
I think so.
He does need to find a land, though.
I am respecting the amount of partying that goes on in Dizani's deck. He's got a Festival, he's got a Revel, he's got a Hedonist. Dizani's deck is a good time. It's greedy. It's just 7 deadly sins deck.
He really did embrace the thing. He did draw a land. Is he just going to do it?
Power it out. Just embrace the variance. Get him.
I mean, he has reasonable other plays, but while your opponent's tapped out, throwing 4 2/2 hasters on the battlefield is pretty sweet, especially when he only has 1 blocker. Oh no! Satyr Hedonist hits the bin. There it is.
Yeah.
It's party time, and you're invited. Jeremy Dizani's hosting at his house, and he attacks for 6 here.
This is Pro Tour Magic the way I like to see it.
This is big time. And he manages to sneak that through past Wafo Tapa, who had been playing quite a few counter spells of some sort or another, usually stymied hopes. And now Wafo Tapa has a big issue on his hands because it's not just one threat. He can't bounce this card. He can't lock it down with something. He can't sudden storm it. It's just going to keep attacking every single turn, though he has a huge top deck here with Raised by Wolves.
Raised by Wolves, really exactly what Wafo wants to see. Able to neutralize 2 of those 2/2s. Being able for Dizani to upgrade that 2/1 into a 2/2 is huge here because it doesn't get eaten by Coastline Chimera. But Raised by Wolves allows Wafo to start attacking for big damage in the air while having enough on the ground to really neutralize Dizani's attacks. So
this has gotten interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think Dizani's still clearly in the driver's seat, but now Wafo is playing a game of Magic.
Okay, so we're going to see Raised by Wolves, and then he's also got a God Hunter Octopus that he can follow that up with to help keep, maybe some huge threat at bay or just start eating those satyrs. And Guillaume Wafo Tapa is certainly not out of this game yet, though we do have to remember that just because Jeremy Dizani has a board state that seems to be dwindling a little bit in the face of Raised by Wolves, which goes on the Vaporkin, Dizani still has 4 spells in his hand. I mean, he's got a grip of cards here and plenty of mana. So attack for 4 with Vaporkin and keep that clock running. And yeah, Guillaume has stabilized. He can trade off 2 of the Wolves for 2 of the Satyrs if he wants block another Satyr. That will put the Vaporkin, however, back down to normal size at 2/1.
I mean, like you said, definitely Dizani still has a handful of action. He's got Market Festival, really powerful, allows him to cast all his spells. The Scry is huge. I guess I'm thinking of Peregrination there, but Ray of Disillusion can deal with the Raised by Wolves, and Starfall can either take out one of those wolves or finish off the Coastline Chimera, as well as dealing with Vaporkin. So, I mean, Dizani's hand still pretty hot right now.
He has a Font of Fertility that he drew. Not the hottest part of that hand, but
No.
he's got plenty of other action here, as you just mentioned, Zach. And, yeah, he's just going to attack with all of the satyrs here and see if Guillaume wants to trade off his wolves. It's only half of a card for Dizani, even if he does. And it's, well, 2/3-ish of a card for... it's really the whole card.
Yeah, I mean, really not that bad for Dizani if Wafo just blocks with 2 wolves. Why? I mean, Wafo's still taking 2. Dizani still has 2 satyrs. The Vaporkin's back down to a 2/1. Not hugely relevant. Dizani can still deploy his board. You know, I mean, he's got 4 cards in his hand. What he really wants to do right now, I think, is draw Eidolon of Blossoms. But yeah, not without any enchantments on the battlefield. God Hunter Octopus not going to be able to get in the metaphorical red zone to start attacking and chipping away at Dizani's life total. I do not hate the aggressive use of Starfall, though. Just taking out one of the wolves, shrinking Vapor can allow you to attack for a lot more damage. I can see him wanting to finish off the Chimera, but I think you want to deal with the Vaporkin. You might just pass and see what happens. Yeah, killing off Chimera means you're threatening 4 damage every single turn, and the Vaporkin is small again. You've got plenty of time to deal with that. You see how hard it is to play Magic at this level by looking at Dizani's body language. Wafo, of course, is calm as ever.
Okay, so Wolves down, Satyrs alive, 2 damage to Guillaume Afotapa. What is the follow-up play here for Jeremy Dizani?
I think he's setting up Starfall on the Coastline Chimera. I just am not that into that play. You just, you don't care that much about it. I see what he's saying, though, because without the ability to stabilize, Dizani can just raise his 4 power worth of attackers, can just end the game in 3 attacks.
That was interesting. He did decide to play the Font of Fertility. He actually hesitated there. I think he remembered that he had the Eidolon of Blossoms in his hand, and there is some argument to be said, like, if you don't need the mana to just hold it in your hand, he probably decided that he might need the mana at some point.
And he's still got Market Festival in his hand, so he's still able to draw, theoretically, off the Eidolon. And, you only need so many cards off Eidolon of Blossoms for it to be totally amazing.
I mean, how many can I get? That's all right, back to Guillaume Afotapa. Remember, he has the God Hunter Octopus in his hand, and he has the land that he can use to play it. His 6 mana drop. He has also drawn Nessian Demolock here.
And Demolock really, really good against a mana base as out there as Dizani's. Being able to take out that Plains could potentially be huge.
But Guillaume is going to bypass that and just use up every bit of mana this turn to play the Octopus. Unfortunately for him, it's not going to be able to attack if Dizani doesn't want it to, as he can get rid of his font. Or are the Satyrs enchantments?
They are enchantment creatures.
They are enchantment creatures.
Yeah,
all right, so he will be able to attack.
I know
some of the tokens in this set are enchantments and some aren't.
Those are these are we're getting where they are not enchantment creatures. They are regular good old satyrs.
Okay.
I think I'm thinking of the Farika 1/1 enchantment creature with
Snakes.
death touch snakes.
Right.
Yes.
Those are definitely enchantments. And the birds are enchantments, but these satyrs are not.
Good old fashioned regular party animals.
Yeah. All right. This is interesting. A Nessian Game Warden for Guillaume Afotapa, and this time he has 3. Now, before going to combat, though, Jeremy Dizani is going to sacrifice his font just to make sure that Guillaume doesn't get to attack with his God Hunter Octopus. Golden Hind adding to the board state, but not really doing much here.
Right. I mean, it's just another 2 points of damage if it ever becomes relevant. But, I mean, Wafo's now firmly in command. The Game Warden able to draw some cards. Demolock able to take out any problematic enchantments or non-creature permanents come onto the battlefield, threatening the Market Festival that we know Dizani leans heavily on.
Ooh.
Oh, man.
He found a starfish as well that he could have taken no matter what that last card was, but it was a much better one in this spot. It was Fleet Feather Cockatrice. And is Guillaume Wafo-Tapa going to be able to steal one here? What was that, a turn 4? Turn 5? I can't remember.
Revel?
Yeah, Great Revel.
Yeah, I think it was about turn 5.
Yeah.
But I mean, that Raised by Wolves just showing how powerful of an uncommon it is. I mean, clocking in for 4 damage, trading with 2 of the satyrs, Coastline Chimera blocking the 3rd. I mean, that's exactly what Wafo needed to stabilize.
Now, does Wafo attack with his Game Warden here? He's thinking.
I just like attacking with Vaporkin. I mean, Vaporkin's not going to block anything. Dazani's at 6. Like, I don't like giving your opponent the option to chump block if that's at all on the table. But yeah, I mean, the Ray and the Festival just not doing a whole lot on Dazani's side.
You don't like it when your opponent chump blocks? Doesn't that mean you're winning?
It does, but I mean, it does mean you're winning, and it's not bad. You're a turn away from forcing the chump block. As opposed to giving your opponent the option of capitalizing on your tapped creature. But I mean, it looks like he's just so close, and he's saying, okay, look.
Dazani could trade off the better part of his board for this Game Warden if he wants.
Oh, right. Yeah, trading off, opting into the 2-for-1. He knows Fleet Feather Cockatrice is coming too, so he knows he's about to be staring down 5 points of evasive damage. Has to think about that on this block.
Yeah, so he's going to opt for the chump block here. Golden Hind jumps in front of the Neshin Game Warden, and Dazani just takes 2, and Guillaume Wafo-Tapa can just safely pass the turn back. Remember, he has that Nessian Demolock in hand, but he's also got Fleet Feather Cockatrice, and that can actually get into the red zone. No need to cast it on his turn and open it up to any sorcery speed removal spells. He's got Jeremy Dazani, though, down to 6, which is a little bit of an awkward number, as he's going to be able to attack him for 5 in the air. Dazani passes the turn back, and here's Guillaume.
Does he have that 7th land for the activation of the Cockatrice? It looks like he does. That is going to be a potential 8 damage in the air.
Yes, now he has lethal damage.
Now, what Dazani can play to, though, he's got Ray of Dissolution, meaning he can gain 3 life on the Raised by Wolves. Raised by Wolves not doing anything right now, but at least it allows him to stay alive for 1 more attack.
And he's going to pass a turn back, and that's going to do it. Guillaume Wafo-Tapa finds the win there. That was a great match. Wow, we had some really, really good matches in the feature match area for the first 3 rounds of draft here.
Yeah, I mean, I was basically 100%. I mean, what we were saying, like 90% something to win. I guess, that was a very, very, very early Revel of the Fallen God, but counterpart Raised by Wolves just right back, and suddenly Wafo went from whatever the opposite of a commanding position is, a commandingly losing position, to right back in that game. I mean, that's a swingy match.
It was, looking at Guillaume Wafo-Tapa's hand, it looked pretty dire. Huge turning point in that game, Raised by Wolves.
Well, I mean, that's like we saw in the first match. I mean, Raised by Wolves defined both those games that we saw Wafo win. I mean, it's just a really powerful Magic card.
It is one of the most powerful cards in his deck for sure, and that's why it's powerful too, right? It's because it's wide. It comes down and it stabilizes your board. That's what he needed to do. Playing the Octopus a turn later stabilized it going forward, but you can still just get bum rushed.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, if you're taking nearly, it attacks you for 8 damage that turn, 8 the following turn, you've got to be able to neutralize 2 of those blockers,
right,
or you're just not going to be able to stabilize. You eat one of the attackers every turn, it just doesn't matter. You're getting dealt too many damage. I mean, that game was all about the Raised by Wolves.
Yeah, and then, of course, the 5/5 on the ground held things down. Was not able to attack at any point during the course of that game, but it did its job of blocking, and it was good to go. All right, so it looks like we're ready to head back over to the news desk where Rich Haggard.
Rich Haggard?
That's maybe like the bad version. It's like the evil Rich Hagan. Yeah, where Rich Hagan awaits. We'll see you guys in a little bit.
Thanks very much to Marshall and Zach. Evil Rich Hagan here with you, bringing you the scores. But first of all, bringing you, later on at least, you. We want you to ask us anything. Here's the thing. Maybe you want to know something about coverage. Maybe you want to know something about working inside R&D. Zach Hill's going to be here to talk all about life inside Wizards. Marshall Sutcliffe will be with us at the desk talking about all things coverage unlimited. Perhaps you want to talk to him about his Limited Resources podcast. Also joining us at the desk will be Pro Tour Hall of Famer Louis Scott Vargas. So if you've ever wanted to know anything about the pro lifestyle, what's it like testing with some of the best players in the world on Channel Fireball? What's it like to come in on Sunday when you want to be playing on Sunday? You can ask us anything. We want you to tweet your questions to hashtag PTJOU. That's Pro Tour Journey into Knicks, PTJOU, and we'll bring you all the answers we can cram in during the dinner break after round 6. Right, some scores on the doors. What have Jelga Vigersma, Junior Ianaga, and Shahar Shenhar got in common, apart from being, Hall of Famer Vigersma, Ianaga, former world champion, and Shahar Shenhar, reigning world champion? The answer is they've all lost in draft this morning to Brian Braun-Duin, the man who got in by making top 8 last week at Grand Prix Minneapolis. That was the only way he could be at this Pro Tour. He's done it. He's now 3-0. Other results to bring you. Shota Yasuoka over William Jensen 2-0. Fabrizio Anteri, last week's Grand Prix Warsaw winner. He defeated Dan Lanthier of Canada, but both Lanthier and Alexander Hayne, teammates on face-to-face games, are at 2-1 coming into block. Alexander Hayne has a really interesting block deck to show you. Todd Anderson, he defeated Kentaro Yamamoto 2-0. Matt Stone, who I featured in the preview on MagicTheGathering.com, well, he had a win this round against Kevin Anktil of Canada. Shaheen Sarani, he's at 2-1 now. Great control player. We imagine he'll be some kind of Esper or maybe even blue-black control deck as we head into block. Brian Kibler of Channel Fireball, he is at 2-1. Gabe Carlton Barnes is a winner this round over Ben Stark. Makahita Mahara went down to Pro Tour Nagoya champion David Schaffman. Frank Karsten is a winner. He's not sure about block, but we'll see. And Paul Rietzel defeated the 9th place man from Born of the Gods, Jared Butcher. Meanwhile, who's king of the hill? It's Andrea Mengucci of Italy. He 3-0'd his draft pod, knocked Sean McLaren off at the front end of the day. He's still there as we head into block constructed. But over on the far side of the studio, we've got a guest. We always knew it was going to be a man called Josh, and we knew that that man called Josh was going to go 3-0. Was it going to be Josh Haller of New Zealand, who'd already defeated Christian Calcano in round 1 and Paulo Vida Dama de Rosa of Brazil in round 2? Or was it going to be the reigning Player of the Year, Josh Utter-Leyton? Here's Brian David Marshall to tell you more.
Hi, everybody. Brian David Marshall here with Josh Utter-Leyton, the ruiner. Josh, you just went 3-0 in your draft pod. You were the first loss at a premier level event for Josh Haller, your third round opponent.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive. Starting out 2-0 in your first, PT or GP.
Yeah.
That's...
You had a pretty. Actually, I was watching your game. That game 3 or game 2, I guess it was.
Yeah.
Was pretty harrowing for you.
Yeah, it was really, really close. I ended up stabilizing at 1 life, and he was at like 28 or something. Peeled exactly the card I needed to be able to block his flyer on the last turn. Stabilized from there at 1. Just dead to so many cards for so many turns.
But by the way, his opponent had mountains.
Yes. Yeah. So
the scariest
every
one.
turn I'm just sitting there well, am I dead this turn? Am I dead this turn? It was a nice sweat, but he didn't draw anything and was able to take it. So that was exciting.
So 3-0. That's always a great way to start a tournament. Tell me a little bit about your draft. I mean, we know Josh Haller was in your pod, but who was in your pod, and what are you thinking about as you sit down to draft a new format? How has this format changed for you?
A lot of questions there. So yeah. Luis and PV, 2 teammates, were in the pod.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I was passing to Luis. So that, kind of know their preferences or whatever. Not that changes much, but that makes it a little more interesting. So the new format, the biggest change to the format is that everything kind of just gets watered down. Theros had a lot of just very strict archetypes. You were drafting the mono black gray merchant deck, or you're drafting the blue white heroic deck. And that's not really the case anymore. You only get 1 booster of Theros, and the other sets don't really support these decks as well. There's no common bestow in the new set, which is the biggest change. It makes heroic so much worse, and so all of these other decks getting worse just opens it up to just more normal Magic, where you're just drafting good cards, and you have a curve of creatures and some spells. Like you're not really, it's much more mid-range kind of decks.
Do you feel like that favors you, as with your experience and success on the Pro Tour, that like playing normal Magic is something that you're going to be maybe better at than the average Magic player? I
don't know about that. Magic is going to be rewarding for players that know what's going on and know how to play, whether you're, in, firm archetypes or,
Okay. Well, I just mean like maybe that idea though, like suddenly your opponent, you're playing someone and you're outmatched and they just go heroic,
To go with that, I think the games have more play now.
Yes.
Because, the games would be more lopsided when everybody just has a focused deck.
Sure.
My deck did its thing and, the game just ends. Now the games, are more likely to draw out longer and different things are going to matter rather than like, you hit the heroic creature plus all the bestow things to go with it,
Yeah. So what did you it looked like you were going green as you started the draft?
Yeah, so I first picked a green card and took another green card early on and then saw no other green. And I was picking up blue cards because those are the best cards in the pack. So at the end of the first pack, I had, 4 blue cards or something, 2 green cards, 2 black cards. So I was blue. I was stuck, I was committed to that. But for my second color, I didn't really know where I was going to go.
Right.
Opened up the next booster. My first pick was between the best green card was the 1 mana pump spell with Devotion to Green.
Sure, Aspect of Hydra.
Yeah, and the best black card was 6 mana 2/3 Death Touch archetype. And there were no blue cards. Like
right. Oh, no.
These are not cards you want to first pick, So like I kind of had to make a decision there as to what my second color was going to be. And I took the black card.
Archetype of Finality.
Yeah, basically I got more late black cards in pack 1 than green cards. I took 2 early green cards, but my black cards I was wheeling. I got Disciple, the 1/3 inspired guy, came around the table.
Yeah.
There was another good black card that came late. So I figure I'm in a much better spot to be black. So take the black card, start drafting black that pack. And it turns out the person who was passing to me for packs 1 and 3 ended up in blue-black. I'm blue-black behind him. That's just a disaster,
So you're not going to see anything in Theros in this
You
case.
would think that, yeah. And green was just wide open, apparently. There were just no green cards open in the first booster, so nobody ends up green. Luis moved into green in pack 2, getting no green cards in pack 1, and just ends up with an awesome mono green deck somehow, despite not getting a first pack. Like, it was a really weird draft. And then pack 3 actually went really well for me somehow. I got 2 Shipwreck Singers, which is one of the best possible cards for blue-black.
What was the blue-black player?
The blue-black player took a Hero's Downfall and a Keepsake Gorgon over both of them, which are
perfectly
both,
reasonable.
Those are both better cards. So I got very lucky to be getting like good cards coming through him. The packs opened well enough in my colors. End up with a good deck still.
Cool. So now you're 3-0 in draft, which means you are going to be playing sort of at the top of the standings when you go into block constructed.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a different, going into an unknown field, do you feel better playing at the top of the standings versus like maybe playing against?
Well, yeah, I feel better. I have 3 wins instead of not.
I mean, as far as your matchups, do you feel like maybe there's a more predictable metagame at the top?
Because draft is first, I don't think it changes anything at all as far as what the metagame looks like.
Okay, so what the metagame looks like. Is there anything you'd be surprised to see from this block constructed format?
I mean, I'm sure there's things that would surprise me, but they're not, like, I don't know what they are. Like, I feel like we did a pretty good job of covering all of the different things you could do in the format. Some, surprising cards that I think are going to be, see a reasonable amount of play are like Daring Thief, Doomwake Giant. Like, there's a bunch of cards that, don't necessarily look like constructed staples or anything that I think are going to be getting played. So.
I can't actually raise my eyebrow, but consider my eyebrow raised. Wow, that's crazy. What would you like if you had to just like tick off how many decks you think you guys saw as being like at least passable? Like how many different types of decks do you think you guys saw?
Probably 10, at least 10.
Wow.
Like I mean, it's hard to know. Like once you know what the format looks like and what people are going to play, then it's going to narrow down a lot. But yeah, it seems like there's a lot of different viable decks. I think the fields will be really diverse.
Is this a wider open block constructed format than maybe we've seen at the last couple of Pro Tours using this?
Yeah, I think there's a lot more diversity in the different archetypes, but there's a lot less diversity in how you build each deck. There's only like so many playables you can play in your 2-color combination or whatever. So that is kind of the difference. There's less wiggle room for building your deck, but a lot more choice in what deck you can play.
Okay, so I know you guys about 2 weeks ago went to Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the two-stage channel fireball testing plan. You go to Eric Froehlich's house, and then you guys were about here for a week.
Yep.
Where is channel fireball halfway through the Pro Tour season? You know, as we go into these last two Pro Tours, how would you assess the channel fireball season?
We have not been having the best year so far. We did poorly at the last two Pro Tours, so definitely hoping to rectify that and get back to our average for the year.
Your average of just like putting 3 people into the top 8.
Yeah, we've got some serious catching up to do.
What do you think? I mean, what do you attribute that to? Just the variance?
No,
is there anything that's changed?
I think we had not great deck choices for the last 2.
Okay. Have you learned anything from those 2 Pro Tours that you feel
I think we made the same kind of mistake in each, in that we played decks that don't have a lot of play and are kind of 55% against the field, or at least the field we were expecting, rather than. Because that's the best we could find or whatever, but because there was no play to them, we didn't have any advantage, from being better than opponents. Normally our win percentage is, let's say 60% or whatever, and we were just kind of giving up that extra 10% edge by playing those decks.
So elaborate a little bit on what you mean by a little play to them, like.
Basically interacting with your opponent. Being able to play interactive games of Magic. We were playing decks that were trying to not interact with our opponents at all, and.
And you're on a team of arguably the best players in the world.
Mm-hmm.
You really, if you guys get a chance to play with your opponent, I mean, you're not going to say this because you're very modest, but given a chance to play Magic and interact, you guys should come out on top.
Yeah, I mean, for Pro Tours, we expect the field to be all good players, so we don't think we have that big of an edge, so we don't mind playing the kind of decks like that, but it did not work out well for us in the past 2 Pro Tours.
Okay, and how do you have a sense of how the team did just through this first draft?
I haven't talked to everyone yet, so I don't really know.
Okay, well,
I know how my pod went.
Yeah, we know
which does have a large percentage of the team.
Yeah,
so.
and we know you went 3-0, and you're in great shape. So I'm going to let you. Head off to lunch and get yourself all sorted out for Block Constructed. Thanks for talking to us, Josh, and good luck for the rest of the tournament.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, and now I guess we're going to take a look at the Block Constructed format. So let's send it back.